My mom is Jeanne Antebi, and my dad is Maurice Antebi. They were both born in Cairo, Egypt, December 2nd, 1945, and I was born a year and a half later. And we had just a ordinary life in Cairo, as far as I can remember, until the war broke out.
My grandfather, on my father's side, had four siblings. I think there was three boys and two girls. And they left Syria in the early 1900s. And three of them, including my grandfather, ended up in Cairo, where my father was born. He didn't have a really pleasant childhood. He was pressed into adulthood at an early age. And so consequently, he was rather stern and strict, and to me, it was not a lot of fun.
Mom worked for her uncle from a very young age, some 17, 18 years of age. She's the oldest of seven. So she was sort of helping her family. And she worked in a photography studio. Her uncle, her mom's brother, owned the biggest studio in Cairo. And she sold cameras, developed pictures, and she was very, very industrious, and she's competent in photography and cameras, knowledgeable. And that's where my father came in one day to have some pictures and met my mom. In Cairo, or in the Middle East, you don't just go to the girl and ask her out. He had to have proper introductions. So he asked her father to introduce him to my mom. And they had a short courtship, and then they were married. My father was an accountant, different companies. We moved around a lot in Egypt, from different cities, different neighborhoods, according to his job. And so I remember moving in many apartments. One of the most memorable one was in Masr Gadida, which means the new Cairo. It's a suburb, and it was beautiful country. It was open, and we always went to private schools.
What comes to my mind is the pressure they had to endure as to have four kids go from Egypt to France and from France to the US. So when we moved here in 1961, I don't remember how old Dad was, in his 40s, right? And he died suddenly at work on a Saturday in 1972, June 1972. And I got a phone call saying, in the morning, your father died. And they said he went to the hospital, but he had died. And I remember the shock of it. It was the only consolation to me was during the week of mourning, the Shiva, and everybody came, people just came from all the congregation, the community, is how much he accomplished.
Cairo was a beautiful city, cosmopolitan. I never felt not wanted as a Jewish person, but I knew they didn't want us there because I just saw my mom and dad, making preparations toward the end. I didn't feel it until I was like maybe 10. But up till then, we went out. We went to the Corniche, which is the Nile. We took buggy rides every Saturday night. We ate corn on the cob roasted, falafel sandwiches. It was just a wonderful life. We took cabs because we didn't own a car. I used to come home from school in the 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, listening to the soap operas on the radio, which was in Arabic. So I used to, just had a normal life, and couldn't wait to listen to the next day, the next episode. And then Mom would take us to the theater, which is always open. It never rains in Egypt. So it was a highlight to go to the theater, to the movie, which is like your drive-in here, but it was sitting with no tops, So it was a wonderful life, but I knew something was brewing.
Egypt, I just knew that I just never felt like this is where I'm gonna live. It just was, you know, a lot of whispering, a lot of unsafe. We were comfortable. We were relatively affluent. We had servants. We had good food. Like Judy mentioned, we had our clothes made, handmade. Our shoes were custom made because they didn't have shoe stores.
My furthest recollection of the feeling that we had to leave, we always had a suitcase ready from as far back as I can remember. And my father always said, we're just guests here. We never were Egyptian. We didn't have a nationality per se. We were Jewish living as guests in Cairo, Egypt.